The morning sun rose over New Gunga, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. Captain DeHayen stood on the observation deck of the colony's main defense station, watching the farmers begin their daily work in the fields. Below, the colony was only 5 years old, but it had grown strong. 20,000 people called this place home now. They had built schools, hospitals, and homes. They had made a life here. Dayan was a tall man with weathered skin and eyes that had seen too much combat. He had fought in the colony wars 10 years ago, back when human settlements fought each other over resources and territory. Those wars had ended when Earth's government unified all the colonies under one banner. Now humans were supposed to be at peace. He turned away from the window and walked to the command center. His second officer, Commander Hygiene, was already there, reviewing the morning reports. She was younger than Dayan, but just as experienced. Her family had been military for 3 generations. Anything unusual? Dayan asked. Hygiene shook her head. All quiet. The morning patrols reported nothing. The farmers are complaining about the weather again, but that's normal. Dayan smiled. Normal was good. Normal meant his people were safe. That changed at exactly 8:47 hours. The alarm system screamed to life. Red lights flashed across every console in the command center. Hin's fingers flew across her keyboard, pulling up data from the orbital sensors. Sir, we have multiple contacts entering the system, she said, her voice tight. Big ones, at least 15 capital ships and twice as many support vessels. Dehaen felt his stomach drop. Origin unknown. They're not broadcasting standard identification codes. Hygiene pulled up the visual feed. The ships that appeared on screen were massive dark gray vessels covered in angular armor plates. They look like weapons built for war and nothing else. Get Dr. Me up here, Dayan ordered, and raise the alert level. I want every pilot in their cockpit and every soldier at their station within minutes. The command center was full of activity. Dr. MJI arrived, still wearing her laboratory coat. She was the colony's chief scientist and their diplomatic liaison. She had bright, intelligent eyes and a mind that could speak 15 different languages. What do we know? She asked. Nothing good, the Dayan replied. He pointed at the screen. Those ships just appeared in our system without warning. They're not human and they're not answering our calls. Me studied the vessels carefully. The design is Rixian, she said quietly. I've seen images in the galactic database. They're one of the major powers in this sector. Are they friendly? Me's expression said everything. No one knows much about them. They expanded rapidly. Over the last century, 47 species are now part of their empire. None of them resisted for very long. Communication console beeped. A signal was coming through, but it was not a request. It was a demand. This is Warlord Krex of the Vrexian Imperial Fleet. A harsh voice boomed through the speakers. The translation software struggled to keep up. The world you call New Gunga is now property of the Vrexian Empire. You will surrender all military forces and submit to Imperial authority. You have 48 hours to comply. The transmission ended. No negotiation. No discussion. Just a command. Dayan looked at MJI. Can you talk to them? I can try, she said. 20 minutes later, Me stood in the communication room facing a holographic projection of the Vrexian warlord, Krex was huge, nearly 3 m tall, with thick gray skin, covered in natural armor plates. His eyes were small and dark, set deep in a face that looked like it had been carved from stone. 4 arms extended from his massive torso, each one thick with muscle. Warlord Krax, Minji began, keeping her voice calm and respectful. I am Dr. MJI, representative of the human colony on New Gunga. We wish to discuss the terms of there are no terms. Craigs interrupted. His voice was like grinding rocks. You are human. Humans are weak, soft-skinned, small bodies. No natural weapons. You are builders, not warriors. You will serve the Empire in the capacity you are suited for. MJI felt anger rise in her chest, but she kept it hidden. We are willing to discuss peaceful coexistence. Human territory is far from your empire. There is no need for conflict. Krex made a sound that might have been laughter. Conflict? You think you could offer conflict to the Vexian Empire? We have conquered 47 species. Some were stronger than you. All of them submitted. You will do the same, and if we refuse, MJI asked, then you will be eliminated. Craig said simply, the Vexian Empire does not tolerate defiance. We have studied your species. You have no natural defenses. Your strength is less than a Vexian child. Your reflexes are slow. Your weapons are primitive. You chose to live on this small world far from your home planet because you are weak and cannot defend what you claim. He leaned forward, and even through the hologram, his presence was intimidating. You have 48 hours. Surrender your military assets. Your leaders will be taken for processing. Your people will be assigned work duties. This is mercy. Accept it. The transmission ended. Nai stood in the empty communication room, her hands shaking with rage. She had spent her entire career studying alien species, promoting peace and understanding, but the Vexians had no interest in peace. They saw humans as nothing more than tools to be used. She walked back to the command center. Dayan and Hen were waiting. How did it go? Dayan asked, though he could see the answer on her face. They will not negotiate, Minji said. They believe we are weak, primitive. They expect us to surrender without any resistance. Hyan pulled up tactical displays showing Vexian ship positions. They have already deployed forces around the planet. 12 landing craft are in orbit. If they decide to invade, we cannot stop them with conventional tactics. Dayan studied the displays for a long moment. Private Junho, his best sniper, entered the command center. The young soldier was barely 25, but he had eyes like a hawk and patience like stone. Sir Junho said, the men are asking what we should do. Should we prepare to evacuate civilians? Dayan thought about the farmers he had watched that morning, the children going to school, the families who had built lives here. He thought about the colony wars, about the fights he had survived, about every human who had ever refused to give up in the face of impossible odds. No, he said finally. We are not evacuating. We are not surrendering, sir. Hijin looked at him in surprise. You heard Dr. MJI. We cannot win a direct fight against them. Dayan smiled, but it was not a happy smile. It was the smile of a man who had fought in trenches, who had survived battles that should have killed him, who knew what humans were truly capable of. When pushed to the edge, who said anything about a direct fight? He said, the Vexians think they know us. They think we are weak because we build Instead of conquer, they think we are. Soft because we choose peace, he turned. To face his officers, they have never asked themselves why we needed to choose peace in the first place. They have never studied human history. They do not know what we are capable of when we stop holding back. Minji understood first. You are going to fight them. We are going to show them, Dayan corrected, that underestimating humans is the last mistake they will ever make. He activated the colony-wide communication system. This is Captain Dayan to all military personnel and civilian volunteers. We have 48 hours before the Vexians expect our surrender. We are not going to give it to them. Instead, we are going to teach them a lesson about humanity. Report to your stations. This is not a drill. This is war across New Gunga. The colony transformed. Farmers picked up weapons. Factory workers began converting machinery into tools of defense, and in the command center, Dayan began planning the first strike against an empire that had never known defeat. The Rexians believed humans were weak. They were about to learn the truth. The clock showed 36 hours remaining when Major Sunwa arrived at the underground bunker complex. He was a compact man with quick movements and eyes that never stopped scanning his surroundings. For 15 years, he had led special operations teams through the worst situations humanity could create. He had trained in every environment from frozen tundra to burning deserts. Now he would use all of that experience against an alien enemy. Show me what we have, Sunwa said to his assembled team. Corporal Minyu spread out maps and schematics across the table. Minyu was an expert with explosives, a skill he had learned in the mining colonies where controlled demolition was an art form. He pointed to several locations on the map. The Vexians have established 3 command posts around the colony. Minyu explained. They are positioned here, here, and here. Each post has approximately 50 soldiers and support equipment. They are relying on their ships in orbit for heavy firepower. Lieutenant Yuna joined them, still wearing her flight suit. She was the best pilot in the Colonial Defense Force. With reflexes that seemed almost superhuman, she had flown through asteroid fields and atmospheric storms that would have killed lesser pilots. Their air patrols are predictable, Yuna added. They fly the same routes every 4 hours. They are not expecting resistance, so they are being lazy about their coverage. Sunwa studied the maps carefully. The Vexians had made a critical mistake. They had assumed humans would either surrender or fight. Like every other species they had conquered before, they expected open battles with clear lines and honorable combat. They had no idea what guerrilla warfare meant. Here is what we are going to do, Sunwa said. Minyu, your team will target their supply lines. Vexians need to eat just like us. They need fuel for their vehicles. Cut off those supplies and they will start making mistakes. Minyu nodded. I can rig the supply routes with enough explosives to make them think twice about every convoy they send. Yuna, your pilots will hit their patrols when they are most vulnerable. Do not engage in extended combat. Strike fast, strike hard, and disappear before they can respond. Hit and run, Yuna said with a slight smile. My favorite kind of mission, and my team, Sunwa continued, will go after their command structure. If we can create chaos in their leadership, the regular soldiers will not know what to do. Captain Dayan entered the bunker. The Vexians have sent another message. They are demanding we begin preparing our military assets for handover. They still think we are going to surrender. Good. Sun Wu said, let them think that. Longer they believe we are weak, the more surprised they will be when we hit them. Private Jinho approached the table. He carried his rifle, a custom-made weapon designed for extreme range shooting. Junho had patience that bordered on supernatural. He could remain perfectly still for days if necessary, waiting for the perfect shot. Sir, Junho said to Dayan, where do you need me? Dayan pointed to a ridge overlooking the main Vrexian command post. There, I need you to watch and wait. When the opportunity comes, take out their senior officer, one shot, one kill, and then disappear. Junho nodded. He did not need to say anything else. He was already planning his approach, calculating wind speed and distance, thinking about escape routes. The teams dispersed to prepare. They had 24 hours. Before the Vexian deadline, they would not wait that long. At midnight, Corporal Minyu and his team moved into position. They had studied the Vrexian supply roads for hours, watching the patterns. The aliens were confident, almost arrogant. Their supply convoys traveled with minimal protection because they could not imagine anyone would dare attack them. Minyu placed the first explosive device under a bridge that the Vrexians used to transport fuel. Device was simple, built from mining equipment that the colony had in abundance. It would not be fancy, but it would be effective. Remember, Minyu whispered to his team through the communication system, we set the charges, we move to a safe distance, and we wait. When the convoy is in the center of the bridge, we blow it. Then we disappear before they can locate us. His team worked in silence, placing charges at strategic points. They were all former miners or engineers, people who understood how structures failed and how to make them fall at the right moment. 3 hours later, a Vrexian supply convoy rolled onto the bridge. Massive vehicles carried containers of fuel and ammunition. Vrexian soldiers rode on top, their armor gleaming in the moonlight. They were singing some kind of war song, celebrating their inevitable victory. Minyu watched. Through his scope, he counted the vehicles. 5, 6, 7. When the 8th vehicle reached the center of the bridge, he pressed the detonator. The explosion lit up the night sky. The bridge collapsed in a shower of metal and concrete, sending vehicles tumbling into the ravine below. Fuel tanks ruptured, creating secondary explosions that could be seen for kilometers. Vexian soldiers scrambled, trying to save their comrades from the wreckage, but Minyu and his team were already gone, melting into the darkness like ghosts. In the sky above, Lieutenant Yuna led her squadron toward the Vexian patrol route. She flew a modified atmospheric fighter, a craft designed for speed and maneuverability. Rather than heavy armor, the Vexians flew larger, more powerful craft, but they were also slower and less agile. Stay tight, Yuna said to her pilots. We go in, hit the rear craft, and break away before they can organize a response. Do not try to be heroes. This is about making them scared to fly. Alone, her squadron dropped out of the clouds like striking hawks. The Vexian patrol consisted of 4 heavy gunships, flying in a loose formation. They had no idea humans were even capable of mounting an aerial attack. Yuna locked her targeting system on the rearmost gunship and fired a missile. The weapon streaked through the air and impacted The Vrexian craft's engine, the gunship, spun out of control and crashed into a forest below. The other Vrexian pilots scattered trying to locate their attackers, but Yuna's pilots had already broken formation, using the terrain to mask their escape. They dove into canyons and flew behind mountains, making it impossible for the Vexians to get a clear shot. One Vexian gunship tried to follow. The pilot was brave but foolish. Yuna led him into a narrow valley, then pulled up at the last second. The Vrexian pilot, with slower reflexes and a less maneuverable craft, could not follow. His gunship slammed into the valley wall. 2 down. Yuna reported, breaking contact and returning to base. The Vrexians had lost a supply convoy and 2 gunships. It was a small victory, but it was a beginning. At the main Vexian command post, Warlord Krex was not pleased. He stood in his command center, watching reports of the attacks come in. His officers looked nervous, an unusual sight. Rixans did not get nervous. They conquered and destroyed. They did not get ambushed by primitive species. Find the humans responsible for this. Krex ordered, send out patrols, destroy any human military installation you find. His officers scrambled to obey. Krex stared at the tactical display, trying to understand what had happened. The humans had struck at night using tactics that were dishonorable. The Vrexian way of war was direct confrontation, strength against strength. These humans fought like cowards, hiding in shadows and running away after their attacks, but they were also effective. That was the troubling part. On a ridge 2 km from the command post, Private Junho lay completely still. He had been in position for 16 hours, watching the Vexian base through his scope. He had not moved, had barely breathed. His body was cramped and sore, but his mind was clear. He watched Rixian officers come and go from the command center. He noted their ranks, their movements, their patterns. He was looking for one specific target, the senior commander, someone whose death would cause maximum disruption. At dawn, a tall Rixian emerged from the command center. He wore more decorations than the others, and soldiers snapped to attention when he passed. This was Krex's second in command, the one who coordinated all military operations. Junho took a breath, held it in, calculated the shot. 2,000 m wind from the east at 15 km/h. Slight upward angle. He adjusted his scope. The Vexian officer stopped to speak with a subordinate. For a moment, he was perfectly still. Junho squeezed the trigger. The rifle made almost no sound, suppressed and designed for stealth. The bullet traveled for nearly 3 seconds before it struck the Vexian officer in the center of his armored chest. The armor cracked and the officer fell. Chaos erupted in the Vexian base. Soldiers ran in every direction trying to find the shooter. But Junho was already moving, crawling backward down the ridge, staying below the sightlines. By the time the Vexians organized a search party, he was 2 km away, hidden in a cave system that the colonists had prepared weeks ago. Back at the human command center, Captain Daeun received the reports. The supply convoy destroyed, 2 gunships down, 1 senior Vexian officer killed, all without losing a single human soldier. Commander Hyan looked at the damage assessments with satisfaction. The Vexians are starting to realize this will not be as easy as they thought. This is just the beginning, Daeun said. They still have superior numbers and Firepower, but now they know we can hurt them. Now they know we are not going to surrender. Dr. Me entered the command center. The Vexian Empire sent reinforcements. 3 more capital ships arrived in the system carrying fresh troops and heavy weapons. Warlord Cross stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the planet below. The small human colony had resisted for 5 days now. 5 days of ambush, sabotage, and attacks that seemed to come from nowhere. It was unacceptable. Deploy old ground forces. Krex ordered. I want every human military position identified and destroyed. No more mercy, no more warnings. If they will not surrender, we will eliminate them. The Vexian Armada began its assault. Dropships descended toward the planet's surface, carrying thousands of soldiers. Heavy war machines rolled out of cargo bays. Vexians would crush this resistance with overwhelming force, just as they had done to 47 other species. But in orbit, Commander Hyan watched the Vexian deployment from her command ship and smiled. They are doing exactly what Captain Dayan predicted, she said to her crew. They are committing all their forces to the ground assault. Their fleet is spread out, focused on supporting the invasion. Her tactical officer looked nervous. Commander, their ships still outnumber us 3 to 1. If we engage them directly, we will lose. Who said anything about engaging them directly? Hyan replied. She activated the communication system. All ships. This is Commander Hyan. Execute plan. Asteroid across human-controlled space. Ships began to move. They were not warships in the traditional sense. There were mining vessels, cargo haulers, and transport ships, but engineer Kyle Yuang had spent the last week retrofitting them with weapons. Mining lasers became precision cutting tools that could slice through armor. Cargo haulers carried missile pods built from mining explosives. Even the smallest transport ships now had guns mounted on their hulls, and they were not fighting alone. They were fighting with the environment. The human fleet moved into the asteroid belt that orbited the system's outer edge. The asteroids were massive chunks of rock and metal, some as large as small moons. The Vexian ships focused on the planet below, did not notice the human vessels positioning themselves. Target the lead Vexian cruiser, Hin ordered. Use the asteroids for cover. Hit and fade just like we practiced. Human mining ship, the Bassin Pride, emerged from behind a massive asteroid. It fired a salvo of missiles at the Vexian cruiser and immediately dove back into cover. The missiles impacted the cruiser's shields, causing minor damage. The Vexian ship turned to pursue, but the Bassin Pride was already gone, hidden in the maze of tumbling asteroids. The cruiser fired its weapons blindly into the asteroid field, destroying rocks, but hitting nothing else. Then 3 more human ships attacked from different angles. The Vexians tried to respond, but their heavy warships were not designed for this kind of fighting. They were built for open space battles, not for navigating through dense asteroid fields while being harassed by smaller, faster opponents. Engineer Kyle Yuang watched from his station aboard a converted cargo hauler. He had installed a rail gun on the ship's hull, a weapon designed to fire chunks of metal at incredible speeds. It was crude compared to Vexian technology, but it was effective. Kyle to all ships, he said, remember, we are not trying to destroy them. We are trying to make them waste ammunition and fuel. We are trying to make them frustrated and angry. Enemies make mistakes, the human fleet danced through the asteroids like fish. In a reef, they would fire a few shots and disappear before the Vexians could respond. It was maddening for the aliens who were used to enemies that stood and fought. One Vexian captain, more aggressive than the others, pursued a human transport deep into the asteroid field. His ship was larger and more powerful, but the human transport was faster and knew the terrain. Transport led the Vexian ship deeper and deeper into the maze of rocks. Then the transport stopped and fired a single missile. The missile did not target the Vexian ship. It targeted a massive asteroid directly above them. The explosion sent the asteroid tumbling. It crashed into other asteroids, creating a chain reaction. The Vexian ship tried to escape, but rocks the size of buildings slammed into its hull. The ship's armor held, but the impact knocked out several weapon systems and damaged its engines. The Vexian captain ordered a retreat, but now he was trapped in the asteroid field with a crippled ship. It would take hours to navigate back to open space. Commander Hyen watched the battle unfold. That is 3 Vexian ships effectively out of the fight, she said. Admiral Tyen will be pleased. Admiral Tyen was the commander of Earth's entire defensive fleet. He was an old man now with white hair and a body that moved slowly, but his mind was still sharp. He had fought in the colony wars and had learned lessons that most people never understood. War is not about who has the biggest weapons, Tyen had told Hyjin before the battle began. War is about who can adapt the fastest. Vexians have conquered many species, but all of those species tried to fight like the Vexians. We will not make that mistake on the planet's surface. The Vexian ground assault was running into similar problems. Captain De Haen had refused to concentrate his forces in any one location. There were no military bases to attack, no fortified positions to siege. Instead, human soldiers were everywhere and nowhere. Major Sun was special operations teams struck at supply depots and communication stations. Corporal Min used demolition experts destroyed roads and bridges, making it difficult for Vexian vehicles to move. Lieutenant Yuna's pilots attacked from the sky, appearing suddenly and vanishing before the Vexians could scramble their air defenses. But the most troubling development for the Vexians was the civilians. Sergeant Sman was a combat medic trained to save lives under fire, but she was also a survival specialist, someone who could teach people how to fight when they had no training. For the past week, she had been working with the colony civilians, showing them how to defend themselves. You do not need to be a soldier to help, Sman told a group of farmers and factory workers. You just need to make it hard for the Vexians to operate, block roads with abandoned vehicles, cut power lines, spread false information, make them paranoid, make them see enemies everywhere. Civilians listened and learned. They were scared, but they were also angry. The Vexians had come to their world and demanded surrender. The Vexians had threatened their children. That was a mistake. A Vexian patrol moved through a small farming town searching for human soldiers. The patrol consisted of 20 warriors, each one heavily armed and armored. They expected resistance, expected an ambush. What they got was something else entirely. The streets were empty. The buildings looked abandoned, but as the patrol moved Deeper into the town, strange things began to happen. Doors would open and close for no reason. Lights would flicker on and off. Objects would fall from rooftops, making the Vrexians jump and point their weapons at nothing. Then the power went out completely. The town was plunged into darkness. Zion. Soldiers activated their night vision equipment, but the streets were filled with smoke from burning tires. Their vision was useless. From the shadows the civilians struck, they were not trained soldiers. They did not have advanced weapons, but they had improvised explosives, homemade traps, and the advantage of knowing every alley and building in their town. One Vexian soldier stepped on a pressure plate, hidden under debris. A trap sprang, not lethal but disabling, injuring his leg. Another soldier opened a door and triggered a tripwire that released a cloud of pepper spray into his face. His armor protected his body, but his eyes burned and watered. The patrol commander tried to organize his soldiers, but they were scattered and confused. They were fighting an enemy they could not see in terrain they did not understand, using tactics they had never encountered. Withdraw, the commander ordered. Fall back to the rally point. As the Vexian patrol retreated, they left behind 2 soldiers who had been injured by traps. The civilians did not kill them. Instead, they left medical supplies and a note in the Vexian language. We do not want to kill you. We want you to leave. This is our home. Back at his command post, Warlord Krex received the reports. The ambush continued. The supply lines were disrupted. Even the civilians were resisting. And in space, 3 of his ships were damaged or trapped in the asteroid field. This is impossible, Craig said to his officers. The humans are weak. They have inferior weapons and no natural advantages. How are they doing this? One of his officers, a veteran of many campaigns, spoke carefully. Perhaps, Warlord, we have misunderstood what makes them weak. Their bodies are fragile, yes, but their tactics are unlike anything we have faced before. Dr. Me had been preparing for this moment. She activated the colony's communication system and broadcast a message not just to the Vexians but to the entire galaxy. Other species were watching this conflict, curious to see how it would end. People of the galaxy, MJI began. You have heard the Vrexian Empire claim that humans are weak. They point to our soft skin, our lack of natural armor, our slower reflexes. They believe these things make us inferior. She paused, letting her words reach across the stars. But let me tell you about human history. We evolved on a planet that tried to kill us in every way imaginable. Ice ages that froze entire continents, predators with claws and fangs. Admiral Tyan stood in the war room aboard Earth's orbital command station, studying the holographic display that showed the entire sector. Red markers indicated Vexian positions. Blue markers showed human forces. For 3 weeks, the Vexians had been trying to conquer New Gunga. For 3 weeks, Captain Dayan and his people had held them off. But Tyan knew that defense alone would not win this war. Gentlemen and ladies, he said to the assembled commanders, we have proven that humans can resist the Vrexian Empire. Now we must prove something more important. We must prove that we can defeat them. Colonel Juan stepped forward. She was a strategic planner, someone who thought in terms of entire campaigns rather than single Battles she had spent weeks analyzing. Vexian tactics studying their strengths and weaknesses. The Vexians have made a critical error, Jowen explained, pointing to the star map. They have committed the majority of their forces to New Gunga, expecting a quick victory. This means their other occupied territories are lightly defended. If we strike at those territories, we force them to make a choice: continue the assault on New Gunga or defend their empire. Admiral Tyan nodded, and either choice weakens them. If they pull forces from New Gunga, Captain Dayan can push them off the planet completely. If they keep forces at New Gunga, we take their other worlds. What targets do you recommend? Dwan highlighted 3 systems on the map. These worlds were recently conquered by the Vexians. The local populations are not loyal to the Empire. Yet, if we can liberate these worlds, we show the galaxy that Vexian conquest is not permanent. We give hope to every species they have subjugated. And how do we take these worlds? Commander Hijin asked. Our fleet is smaller than theirs. We cannot win through superior firepower. No, Jowen agreed, but we can win through superior tactics and coordination. We have advantages the Vexians do not expect. We have boarding teams. We have cyber warfare capabilities. We have the ability to turn their own technology against them. Pilot Dongman entered the war room. He was a specialist in zero-gravity combat, trained to fight aboard enemy ships. He commanded a team of Marines who could turn space vessels into battlegrounds. Admiral Doman said, "My teams are ready. We have been studying Vexian ship designs. Their vessels are built for honor combat with wide corridors and open spaces. They expect enemies to meet them head-on. They do not expect boarding actions." Tai smiled. The Vexians thought they understood warfare because they had conquered so many species, but they had never fought humans. They had never encountered an enemy that studied them, adapted to them, and exploited every weakness. Execute the plan, Tajin ordered. Hit all 3 target systems simultaneously. Make the Vexians spread their forces thin. Show them that humans do not just defend, we attack. The human fleet moved out. They were not massive warships with overwhelming firepower. They were converted civilian vessels, small military cruisers and fast attack craft, but they had something the Vexians did not: flexibility. Specialist Hound worked from the cyber warfare center aboard the flagship. She was young, barely out of university, but she understood computer systems better than anyone Tyan had ever met. While the Vexians had advanced technology, they had never faced an enemy that weaponized information itself. The Vexian command network uses a centralized communication system, Hound explained to her team. They trust their technology because it has never been compromised before. That is their mistake. I can infiltrate their network and spread false information. I can make them see threats that do not exist. I can turn their automated defense systems against them. She activated her systems and began the attack. It was not a physical assault with weapons and explosives. It was an invisible war fought in computer networks and data streams. His code spread through the Vexian network like a virus. Subtle and patient Rixian commanders in 3 different systems suddenly received urgent messages: enemy fleets approaching, rebel uprisings in civilian sectors, critical system failures on capital ships. The messages looked authentic, came from verified sources, and demanded immediate attention. The Vrexian forces scrambled to respond to threats that did not exist. They diverted ships to defensive positions. They locked down entire districts on occupied worlds. They ran diagnostic checks on systems that were working perfectly, and while they were distracted, the real human attack began. At the Kavek system, pilot Dongman led his boarding teams toward a Vexian battleship. The ship was massive, 10 times larger than the human assault craft carrying Dongman's marines. Its weapons could destroy cities. Its armor could withstand orbital bombardment, but it was not designed to stop 50 humans in combat suits from attaching to its hull. Breaching charges ready, Dong said. Remember your training. Move fast, stay together, and trust your squadmates. Vexians are stronger than us. Individually, we win by fighting as a unit. The charges detonated, blowing a hole in the Vexian ship's hull. Air rushed out into space, but the breach sealed itself automatically. Dolman's team rushed through before the emergency systems could react. Inside the ship, Vrexian soldiers scrambled to respond. They were caught off guard, not expecting enemies inside their vessel. They grabbed their weapons and rushed toward the breach point, but Dongman's Marines had already spread out, using the ship's own structure as cover. They set up overlapping fields of fire in the wide corridors that the Vexians loved for honor combat. When the Vexian soldiers charged forward, expecting to crush the humans with superior strength, they ran into a carefully planned kill zone. Human weapons fired in coordinated bursts. A Vrexian soldier would advance, only to be hit by fire from 3 different angles. Their armor was strong, but it could not stop concentrated fire from multiple directions. They tried to fall back, but the Marines had already closed off their retreat routes. Secure the engine room, Dongan ordered. If we control the engines, we control the ship. His teams moved through the vessel like they had trained for months. They used grenades to clear rooms. They moved in pairs, covering each other. They turned every corner into a potential ambush point. The Vrexian crew was brave, but they were not prepared for this kind of fighting. They were warriors trained for glorious combat, not for brutal room warfare where the enemy used every advantage of terrain and coordination. Within 2 hours, Dongman's teams had captured the battleship's engine room and bridge. The Vexian captain, surrounded by human marines, had no choice but to surrender his vessel. 1 battleship captured, Dolman reported to Admiral Taunen. Minimal casualties on our side. The Vrexians were not expecting boarding actions. Excellent work, Tajin replied. That battleship is now ours, added to our fleet. At the second target system, Colonel Jan commanded a ground assault to liberate an occupied world. The local species, the Kelver, had been conquered by the Vrexians 2 years ago. They had submitted without much resistance, believing the Vrexian Empire was too powerful to fight. Now Jawan was about to show them otherwise. We are not here to conquer, Jan told her officers. We are here to liberate. That means we work with the local population. We show them that resistance is possible. We give them the tools to fight for themselves. Human forces landed on the planet under cover of darkness. They did not announce their arrival with bombardments or displays of force. Instead, they quietly contacted the Calver resistance movements that had Formed underground, G1 met with the Calver leaders in a hidden base. The Calver were insectoid beings, smaller than humans but quick and intelligent. They looked at G1 with a mixture of hope and skepticism. The Vrexians have not been defeated in 100 years. The Calver leader said, "What makes you think you can succeed where so many others have failed? Because we do not fight the way other species fight." Jaewin replied. She spread out tactical maps and weapon schematics. We use combined arms warfare, artillery armor, infantry, and air support all working together. We adapt to the battlefield. We exploit enemy weaknesses, and most importantly, we never give up. She handed the Calver leader a weapon, a human-designed rifle that was simple to use but effective. "We will teach you our tactics. We will fight alongside you. Together, we will drive the Vrexians from your world." The liberation of the Calver home world began with coordinated strikes across the planet. Human artillery bombarded Vrexian positions. From long range, human tanks supported Calver ground troops as they advanced. Human aircraft provided close air support, destroying Vexian vehicles and fortifications. The Vexians, expecting another easy defense, were overwhelmed. They had grown comfortable, believing the Calver would never rise up. They had scattered their forces, focusing on controlling major cities rather than maintaining military readiness. Now they paid the price for that complacency. Human soldiers worked seamlessly with Calver fighters. The humans provided heavy weapons and tactical expertise. The Calver provided local knowledge and rapid movement. Together they formed an effective fighting force that the Vrexians could not counter. Within a week, the Vrexian occupation forces on the Calver home world had been pushed back to their primary base. Colonel Jiwon stood on a hill overlooking the base, watching as her artillery pounded the Vrexian positions. They can surrender. The Vrexian High Council met in emergency session on their home world, far from the battlefields where their empire was slowly crumbling. 12 council members sat in the Great Hall, each one representing a different military caste. They had ruled the empire for 100 red years, conquering species after species, expanding their territory without ever facing serious resistance. Until now we have lost 17 worlds. The first council member announced, "Human forces have liberated 9 systems that we previously controlled. Rebellion movements have started on 6 more. Our fleet has lost 12 capital ships, either captured or destroyed, and we still have not conquered a single human colony." World, the council chamber fell silent. These were not losses the Vrexian Empire could easily accept. "How is this possible?" Another council member demanded. "The humans are weak, physically inferior. They have no natural advantages. Every analysis predicted they would surrender within days. The analyzers were wrong." The first council member said, "We measured human strength in the wrong ways. We looked at their botas and ignored their minds. We studied their weapons and ignored their tactics. We assumed they would fight like the other species we have conquered. That was our mistake." He activated a holographic display showing battle recordings from New Gunga. The council watched as human soldiers executed complex ambush, used terrain to their advantage, and struck from unexpected angles. They watched pilot Dahlman's boarding team's capture a Vrexian battleship through coordination and tactics rather than brute force. They watched specialists. High-end cyber attacks create chaos in systems that had never been breached before. The humans have something we did not account for, the first council member continued. They have thousands of years of warfare experience. They've evolved in an environment that forced them to become the deadliest predators on their planet, not through strength, but through intelligence and cooperation. And then they spent centuries fighting each other, perfecting the art of war. What do you recommend? A council member asked. We negotiate, the first council member said, before more of our empire crumbles, before the other subject species realize they can resist, before this war costs us everything. The council debated for hours. Pride fought against practicality. Tradition clashed with survival. Finally, they reached a decision. Vexians would offer peace talks. At New Gunga, Captain Dahayan received the message from Earth Command. The Vexians wanted to negotiate. After 6 weeks of brutal combat, the empire that had never retreated was asking for talks. Is this a trick? Commander Hyen asked. Possibly, Dayan admitted, but if they are genuine, this is our chance to end the war on favorable terms. We have proven we can fight. Now we must prove we can make peace. Dr. MJI was called to represent humanity at the negotiations. She would not go alone. Admiral Tyen, Captain Dayan, and Commander Hyen would accompany her as reminders of human military capability. The message would be clear. Humans could fight, but they preferred peace. The negotiations were held aboard a neutral station in space, far from both human and Rixian territory. Dr. MJI walked into the conference room, flanked by her military escorts. Across the table sat Warlord Krex and 3 members of the High Council. Krex looked different now. He was still massive and intimidating, but there was something else in his eyes. Respect, perhaps, or maybe just the recognition of an equal. Dr. MJI Craig said, his voice more measured than before. The Vexian Empire acknowledges that our initial assessment of humanity was incorrect. You have proven yourselves capable warriors. We did not want to prove that, MJI replied. We wanted to live in peace. You forced this war upon us. Yes, Krex admitted. That single word was significant. The Vexians did not often admit mistakes. We believed your choice of peace indicated weakness. We did not understand that it indicated strength. A species that is truly weak cannot choose peace. They are simply conquered. You chose peace because you knew the cost of war. MJI nodded. Now let us discuss how to end this war. The negotiations lasted 3 days. The humans presented their terms, and they were not gentle. The Vexians expected to negotiate from a position of strength, but the humans had shifted that balance. First, MJI said, complete withdrawal of all Vexian forces from human space, every colony world, every station, every ship. You will leave and not return without explicit permission. Second, Admiral Tyen continued, reparations for the colonies you attacked. You will provide resources and technology to help rebuild what your invasion damaged. Third, Captain Dayan added, recognition of humanity's sovereignty. You will acknowledge our right to defend ourselves in our territory. You will not threaten or coerce human settlements. The Vexian council members looked at each other. These terms were harsh, but they were Not unreasonable, the humans were not. Demanding the destruction of the Vrexian Empire, they were simply demanding respect and compensation, and what do you offer in return? Kay asked. Commander Hyan leaned forward. We offer peace. We offer to end this war before it costs both of our species more than we can afford. We offer technology, sharing and cultural exchange. We offer the possibility of alliance. One of the council members scoffed. Why would we need an alliance with you? Me smiled. Because we are not the only species watching this conflict. Every species you have conquered is wondering if they can resist like we did. Every neighboring empire is reassessing your strength. You need allies now more than ever, and humans make very good allies as long as you treat us as equals. The Vrexian Council conferred privately. When they returned, the first council members spoke. We accept your terms. Complete withdrawal from human space. Reparations as specified. Recognition of sovereignty. In return, we request a non-aggression pact and the possibility of future cooperation. Agreed, MJI said. The treaty was drafted and signed. The Vrexian Empire, which had never retreated, officially withdrew from human territory. The war was over. As the Vrexian delegation prepared to leave, Krex approached Captain Dayan. The two warriors studied each other for a moment. You are a formidable opponent, Craig said. If circumstances were different, I would be honored to fight alongside you rather than against you. Dayan nodded. Perhaps someday you will have that opportunity. The galaxy is large and there are many threats. Former enemies can become allies. Perhaps. Kirks agreed. He extended one of his forearms. Dayan grasped it in a gesture of respect. The news of the treaty spread across the galaxy. Within hours, the Vrexian Empire had been forced to negotiate with a species they had intended to conquer. Humans had achieved what no other species had managed in a century. They had fought the Vrexians to a standstill and negotiated from a position of strength. On New Gunga, the celebration was subdued. Major Sunu, Corporal Minyu, Lieutenant Yuna, Private Junho, Sergeant Sman, and all the others who had fought did not feel like celebrating. They had lost friends and comrades. They had seen the cost of war up close, but they had also protected their home. They had proven that humans could not be easily conquered. They had earned their place among the stars. 5 years passed. Galaxy changed in subtle but important ways. The species that the Vexians had conquered began to assert their independence. Some negotiated better terms, others rebelled, knowing that resistance was possible. The Vrexian Empire remained powerful, but it was no longer the dominant force it had once been. Human colonies expanded across the stars. New settlements were established on distant worlds. But these colonies were different from before. They were defended by soldiers like Hyan, and their veterans. Every human colony had defense forces trained in the tactics that had defeated the Vexians. Other species approached humanity with caution and respect. Some sought alliances, others sought to learn human military tactics. A few even hired human military advisors to train their own forces. The Rixians, surprisingly, became trading partners and occasional allies. Krex visited Earth once as part of a diplomatic delegation. He toured human militaries and watched young soldiers train. He saw them practice the tactics that had made them so effective. coordination, adaptability, and the refusal to give up. Your species is young compared to many in the galaxy. Krex told the Academy Command, but you have learned lessons that took most species millennia to understand. You fight not with pride or honor, but with efficiency and determination. That makes you dangerous. That makes you valuable. Dr. Me continued her work promoting peace and understanding between species. She wrote extensively about the war, analyzing what had happened and why. Her conclusion was simple: peace was not weakness, peace was a choice that required strength to maintain. Any species can make war, she wrote. It takes true courage to choose peace, but that choice must be backed by the ability to defend yourself. Peace without strength is surrender. Strength without peace is tyranny. Humanity has learned to balance both. Private Junho, now a lieutenant, trained new snipers in the art of patience. He taught them that warfare was not just about shooting, it was about waiting, watching, and striking at exactly the right moment. Corporal Minu, promoted to sergeant, taught demolition and tactics. His favorite lesson was about using the environment as a weapon.